Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Were there any changes that need to be made? All right. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as? Motion by Archie,
Second.
second by Mary Lou. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, sir. All right. That was quick. No new business. Old business, rezoning request by Orestes.
Ortez.
Who say?
Ortez.
One more time.
Ortez.
Ortez.
Ortez more,
Oh, it's just spelled wrong on that. Ortiz.
well, no, I spelled right, but I don't know how to actually. Anyways,
Looks like the rest is to me.
he called about an hour ago, said he's not gonna make it, but I'll let Mr. Helmut explain what we should do here, so.
And I know there were a couple outstanding questions about pool tables, locations, that sort of thing, but just wanted to note one thing. Per the zoning ordinance, planning commission shall have 30 days within which to submit its report. If the planning commission disapproves the amendment within 30 days, it shall require the favorable vote of a majority of the board of mayor and aldermen to become effective. If the planning commission fails to submit a report within the 30-day period, it shall be deemed to have approved the proposed amendment. So that clock got started when the planning commission first considered this January 13, 2025. So that'd be February 12th would be when that 30-day clock went out. So
Oh.
they just want to factor that into this.
So does that mean that it just automatically gets approved?
No, so planning commission can vote to recommend approval or vote to not recommend approval. It'll go to the board of mayor and aldermen. But if planning commission takes no action, February 12th, 2025 will be considered as if the planning commission recommended approval. And then the board of mayor and aldermen then makes a decision whether to rezone or not. And the only difference is a small one, but if the planning commission recommends approval, then it's a majority of the board of mayor and aldermen who are present at that meeting that can approve it. If the planning commission does not recommend approval, then it takes a majority of the full board. So if a couple folks are missing, then they, in publish remembrance. How many members on the board of mayor and aldermen for Dover? It's
Fine.
5. So for instance, in theory, if 2 people are missing, you have 3 people there. If the planning commission would vote to recommend the rezoning, if those 3 people, 2 voted yes, 1 voted no, it would pass. If the planning commission voted not to recommend approval, and there were 3 people there, and 2 voted yes and 1 voted no, then it would fail, because you need to have a majority of the 5, not a majority of those present. So it's a small distinction, but just wanted to.
I guess my question is why is he not here? If he really wants this,
And
he
of course,
wants
he's a truck driver, and with all they got delayed because of all the weather, that's why he couldn't make it last meeting, and they're still behind, he's still behind on the deliveries, he was somewhere in Alabama.
he has no family or anybody that could come and talk for him?
I don't know all that.
I guess we need to
You
decide.
had questions, and I can't remember what they were, but I remember you were telling me. You said-
My question is having pool tables at a laundromat.
You can't question that. That's not part of the zone. We either approve from an R1 to a C2. We can't tell a man what he can and cannot have in his building. We can only approve from an R1 to C2.
Well, we need a laundromat in town, there's no doubt about that.
Then you're gonna have a pool table. Motion.
Well, and just to clarify too, so this would be the rezoning, and then someplace got to apply for a business license and go through that process too.
Correct.
Well, he just may not have much business, and a lot of women won't show up if it's got 2 pool tables.
That's not our problem.
That's his problem. Well, we need a laundromat.
All right, so do you have a motion to,
Approve from R1 to C2.
thank you. You did a great job. Do we have, okay, we do have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries.
And so this recommends rezoning, and that'll go before the.
Go to the next.
Yes.
The alderman next month.
Council, yes.
And just clarify one thing too, don't believe, well, no one in the audience, but no public comments, obviously, for, yeah.
All we have the update of the subdivision regulations.
And this is something that, that if we don't get it all done this meeting, it's something that we will have to try to get done by the end of March. We got a lot of stuff coming down in the future that this is gonna really affect. So, just want to throw that out there.
So this is gonna be updating our subdivision regulations.
Yes. They ain't been updated to it, I forget what the date was on, it's been on.
2007, I believe.
Well, let me ask you this, do we have a subdivision in the city now?
No, we don't, but
Not what's coming.
not what's come right. So, and this is just gonna update, what we do have subdivision regulations though. And this is just to update all that to get it up to where we're going to be.
And anytime anyone has broken up a plat, or broken up a lot into two parcels or so, they follow the subdivision
Following-
regulations.
It ain't a subdivision, but it follows under the
Right.
subdivision regulations.
And I think this really sort of looking ahead, hearing that there could be some larger subdivisions coming through,
Well,
so it's sort of like,
it's going to be.
yeah.
I mean,
So this is a
it's
good
pretty,
part
it's pretty adamant that
to
we're
be
going to have
proactive.
some larger.
Be
'cause there's been-
proactive on this.
Yeah. we
And I
need to
hope
be-
I got it all printed off to where you got
Yeah.
everything.
I think
that's
you
not-
did. Is there a proposed change 3?
I double checked all, I thought everything was good on this one.
Oh, yep, clarify amendment process.
Wait, may I see what you've got?
Why is mine not printed? Because I printed it straight off his email this time.
Well, I'm not doubting you, sir.
Yeah,
All I see is a
I have
2 and it goes to 4.
Right.
Got,
2, so we're up, our page 1 is the same. Aha!
So it didn't print on the back side.
It's on the back.
But I printed it straight from the email.
Sir, I can't explain that.
Let me have yours, I'm gonna go make copies for everybody.
Yeah, I don't have two either, I just have four.
Yeah, because I don't know why it's doing that.
And I got an extra copy too, so I don't know, you got. I wonder what else I'm missing. So I don't know that I can properly do this if I hadn't read it all.
He's gonna make copies. Yeah.
So if it's
We can read it all
helpful,
tonight if
what
you
it
want.
is, I just went through the subdivision regulations and, you know, looked a little bit at some other subdivision regulations too, and based on my experience, and just sort of ran through and put together a list of places, some things that are other subdivision regulations. And so the first part of it is, I think fairly straightforward administrative changes, and then a whole bunch of other things that I think may wish to consider. And then based on your comments and so, what I can do is I can put together, you know, the proposed amendment and so too, so. But just wanted to put a long list out there to get the ball rolling, if that makes sense.
Will there be one entry in and out?
Um,
One entry into a subdivision, or do we have two entries? Off of another road?
I don't recall off the top of my head. A lot of times, what a lot of places do is they'll have a minimum threshold. Let's say if you have more than, let's say, 20 lots or 30 lots, you have to have at least one, you have to have at least two entrances from a
Because
fire
I know my
safety
nephew lived
standpoint.
in a subdivision in Florida, and that one, they only had one entry, and it was so hard to get out because that was such a busy road that they were on.
And then when you do multiple ones of those on the same road, then that creates a lot of traffic
Yes.
headaches.
And you can't get, there's no other way to get out of there except that one way.
We have had two readings on
What's that, sir?
it. We have had two readings on it.
I think so. I think we'll have to have anything like that. I think we have two readings on it.
Us or
That's a,
council.
yeah. No, not for us. We'll pass it one time.
And the council
And
has
then
had
the
two.
council will do it on one reading or two. We won't have to have two readings here. Just the one to pass it.
We probably can't vote on this because we really haven't digested
Uh-uh.
it. There's too many pages.
Well, and my hope would be based on the feedback that I can draft something up, because a lot of these are just, hey, here's something to think about, but it's a little more discussion on what setting you want to use, or.
Right,
Do you know we're interested in drainage?
You know, I noticed this yesterday and I didn't say anything. I was thinking about something else.
So one of the thoughts out on there that could be considered, it isn't already on there, and I apologize, there were a couple different communities, so it takes a little bit, but a lot of places will actually have it put right on the plat and note that the developer is responsible for any drainage on the property and stuff, so, you know, just helps make it nice and clear on that too, so.
Yeah.
That's pretty, he said he's gonna make a couple more copies.
Okay.
Have you been out by there at Archie? I know we're waiting on Jeff. Have you been out by Colson where they've started the, you've been out by there
Yeah.
at Colson? Yeah, they've started the
100 times.
apartments out there.
I guess page 4, what we're looking at now, under 3, we're talking about the emergency equipment. A pull down fire alarm type switch.
What page are you on?
What page are you on, sir?
Well, it doesn't say what page.
Here, I'm printing off some more, we're gonna have paper on it.
Okay.
It's under a 3,
Yeah, I'm not, I'm not.
where it says development agreement on that.
Before I
That's the
look
one
at
we
it.
don't have?
No, different 3. It's on my page 4.
Let me see what your page 4 looks like at the top.
We didn't have anything on
Oh, okay, indicated entrance.
that. Indicated entrance.
Yeah, any gated entrance used to access private street shall be equipped with an emergency switch that requires no key or password or other security device.
So what's your question or
Yeah. this-
comment about that, Archie?
In order, in the replacement of a pull down security switch or some, a lot of places you go into, a siren opens the gate.
A siren or?
Siren, the
Okay.
emergency vehicle siren, the well.
Oh, okay, it signals ahead and, okay.
So, I mean, I'd much rather, to me, I'd much rather have that in there because that's a time saver
Yeah.
than someone jumping out and trying to find the location and open that. Does that, does that have to be rewritten to include that or can it?
We can add that in, and just to clarify, so one of the missing pages, so this was a little more guidance, direction on group housing, private streets and drive requirements, something you may want to think about. So this was an example I pulled from another set of subdivision regulations, so. But certainly, you know, that's just a draft text, obviously, and that's the exact sort of thing that can be added. And if we go through this again, I apologize, but I'll add page numbers because that'll make it a lot easier.
Yes, easier to find.
Actually, Jeff will have to do this. I don't think I want to vote on it until I've read it all the way through.
Oh, I don't think it's designed to vote on
Yeah.
tonight by any
No,
means, so.
no,
yeah.
it's not even.
I mean, if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it.
And then based on your feedback, so for instance, you know, I can make that change in there and then I'll pull together the proposed language. And then there'll be very distinctive proposed language. And then that's still very much in draft form as well.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No worries, sir.
All right. We're gonna mix it up.
Oh, so you just bring the whole new pamphlet in.
I'm walking around, so I'm gonna mix it.
All right, so we need a motion to table this to the next meeting, give us a chance to review this.
Yeah, right, we can
Good
proceed.
idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Right, we need to
Since it
discuss
has not been, it's not been revised in such a length of time, is there recommendations that you may have that needs to be in place as well. Because I know with everything that I'm doing, I mean, this is all gonna be new to us.
Yeah.
And I would just like to, have some recommendations of what you feel, because I know you deal with this all the time with other small towns and cities and towns. So we want to make sure we get it right. We want to make sure that we've got everything in place, wording and everything. So if you, as we come back next month, we'll have our own questions, but can you have some recommendations that you can have for us that would make us, move forward with it?
Sure. Would it be helpful for me to just sort of run through these a little bit and sort of get
Yeah,
feedback?
that'd be great. That would be great. Definitely.
So I have a little more of the straightforward ones on the top. So,
Okay.
one, Tennessee Department of Highways changed their name to TDOT, so I think that's a pretty straightforward change. Second one, a lot of subdivision regulations have a section called interpretation, conflict, and severability. And what these are designed to do, so interpretation says this is the minimum standard. So you can go above and beyond, but this is the minimum. So just clarifies that. Conflict with public and private provisions just clarifies that, this is not designed to try and replace or interfere with state or federal law. So just, and pretty straightforward stuff, but, just clarifies it. And, also clarifying, hey, where there's an easement or covenant or other private agreement. Severability, so that just clarifies that, let's say, for whatever reason, court might come in and say, hey, this section of subdivision regulations, it's in conflict with Tennessee law, needs to come out, that the rest of the document is still good. That knocking that one little clause out doesn't knock the whole document out. And then have, the third big change there is clarifying the amendment process. And it just talks about how actually to amend the subdivision regulations. So the way that is, and this is all draft language, so these can be changed. It's completely free and open. Just, if you can give me the feedback, then I can make the adjustment. Just saying that, for the amendment process outlined here would be, there would need to be a public hearing by the Planning Commission, and that's required by by Tennessee state law. And has to be noticed in a newspaper. It talks a little bit about how the actual amendment will be read, and just clarifies a little bit of that process. And then another possible change is change 4, which would be the vacation of plats process. So sometimes someone will say, hey, the plat that I need to vacate, so it just creates that process. Proposed change 5, vesting period. So it just clarifies that, so if the Planning Commission approves a preliminary plat, then that approval essentially is good for up to 3 years, and that lines with what Tennessee state law is. And then beyond those, just had a couple of things that may want to think about. What I've tried to do is, hey, here's the idea, here's the reason for it, here's what your current language says, and then here's some examples of how some other folks might have done it. So one is recording process and requirements. So after the Planning Commission approves a plat, and the purpose here is just to clarify the process once the plat is approved by the Planning Commission, and the current language I have right in there. And so you have 2 paragraphs that are currently in subdivision regulations, and just clarifies, hey, approval of final plat should not constitute acceptance of by the public of the dedication of the street or the public way or approval. And then approval of final plat shall be null and void if the plat is not recorded within 6 months after the date of approval. So just puts an end date on there so someone just can't hang on to a plat for a little bit. So it just has some examples where from a different subdivision regulation, they go into a little more depth on things like signature, and then the recordation. So it's just a little bit more in depth than what's currently there. Another proposed change requiring as-bills. Once the developer is essentially finished with the development, then they'd be required to produce as-bills. So this is where they're sending someone in, and it's a developer's cost. They go in, they survey, and they say, hey, here's where they had a plan on where the road was supposed to go, they had a plan on where the sewer was supposed to go, that sort of thing. This is where they go back, and then a surveyor comes in and actually measures where did it actually go. So sometimes you run into things like the gravity sewer is too shallow and would need to be fixed, that sort of thing. But what this would be requiring the developer to do is to produce an as-built at the end of the project, and then that as-built can then go before Dover's engineer, and Dover's engineer can then look through and see, all right, this, you put everything in, let's just make sure like the correct degree of slant on the gravity sewer is correct, or the road is exactly where it's supposed to be, or is it close enough where it's not a big deal. So it's just one more thing, it sort of checks the work at the end of the project. So maybe something to consider. One of the other possible changes that I know I'm throwing a lot out, I'm just trying to cover the ground here. One of the things you may want to think about is group housing project, and that means like an apartment complex or multiple rentals within a lot, that sort of thing. Sometimes there will be private streets. So this would be outlining that private streets and drives used for multifamily must meet street construction requirements. It just clarifies that. And so I have an example here from another community, private streets. Just says, hey, if there's going to be a private street, it's construction design and construction standards provided. And also says that a private street is still getting inspected by Dover to make sure that it's up to snuff. And then also, hey, if it's a private street, it's to be maintained by the developer or a legally established homeowner association or other similar group, and that has to be approved by the planning commission. So there's a provision there to make sure those things are being, a developer doesn't just come in, put in the private streets, and then nobody's there to maintain them. And then Dover's stuck with that.
Is there an opportunity or a time where the developer would turn over these private streets to the city?
That would be in a public street process. But these would be private streets, and the idea would be, let's say someone's putting in an apartment community, and it has 4 apartment buildings, and they have driveways that connect those apartment buildings to the public road. This would be where a developer then would put in that private street, and then Dover would not be responsible for maintaining the private street and those driveways. Instead, it would need to be whatever association the developer puts in place to maintain those. So this is just sort of outlining that process.
It has to be kind of like Cambridge apartments.
Gotcha.
But not like Rose Drive.
No, Rose Drive is ours.
It wouldn't be like Rose Drive
Right,
with the condos. It would be more like with Cambridge, because Rose Drive is,
that's our street.
it's city, yeah. It was
Where's
totally.
Road Drive?
Rose Drive for condos.
Off of Church Street.
Foundation, Off of.
Side
Or
of
you
the
can see them
cemetery,
coming
going
across
off
the
the
bridge.
cemetery.
Yeah, yes, yes.
So fairly common split is if it's single family detached homes, a lot of times those streets become public, but if it's townhomes or apartments or condos, and those stay private. And this just outlines a little bit more of the private streets.
So wait a minute, Rose Drive is the road that goes through the cemetery.
No, it was
No,
the
it goes to the side of the cemetery and goes back to the condos on the
So
water.
do the city responsible for the road in the condo area?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
Even though that
This will
was,
be different.
even though that was an add-on.
Uh-huh. That's what we're talking about now. The developer will be responsible for them now, right?
And
That's,
either
see,
the
that's,
developer or if looking to get out of the project, then they have to create some sort of association, then they would
okay,
charge
so
assessments
it
to
won't
pay.
be.
So those homeowners then would pay for
responsibility.
their maintenance of their private streets.
Right,
And the street should have to be wide enough for 2 cars to pass.
And
2 cars can't pass on that road.
mm, no,
Somebody has to wait.
Yeah.
that's where number 2, so hey, here are the standards, it's a private street, but you have to build it to public road standards essentially.
Right,
And then to your point, number 3, that's where I can adjust that language in, so by siren
Yes.
or Knox box, some
Yes.
other thing too.
Because if you don't have a wide enough spot, plus if they pull off the side of the road and it's completely blocked.
And it's a hill on both sides. And there's just no place to pull over, except at the beginning and at the end.
There's plenty of spots over there besides those concrete pillars.
To pull over?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the pillars, but not,
The concrete, the
somebody has to
stone
stop up there and wait.
with the writing on it.
Oh, yeah, those?
Yeah.
There's room up there, but somebody has to,
True.
if you drive down there, you can't meet somebody,
You
it's
can't
not
meet,
rude.
that's right, it's not in your room. Nope.
Well, this is in here about the emergency gate, it says it should have emergency. Should be clearly visible and labeled as an emergency access device on a gated community.
And I think the thing there is added a device where
Either or.
EMS could signal when the gate
And
opens.
where a siren could open it.
It says a pull down fire alarm switch is preferred.
And we'll make that either or adjustment. And next one there is just something to think about. I don't have any example language here, sorry, but just might want to provide some additional clarity on steps for condominiums. So what the requirements are, where they need to provide the condo documents, and then as-built and so too. And the next one up is development agreement. And the role of the development agreement, so as we look at this process, it'll be a preliminary plat, and that's where the developers come in and saying, hey, I'm going to take these 20 acres and I'm going to turn it into, let's say, 30 lots. And here's where the public streets will go, here's where the utilities go, that sort of thing. So the planning commission then would look at that preliminary plat and say, hey, make this adjustment, this adjustment, this adjustment, and then if it's approved, then the next step is the developer then would generate construction drawings, and that's a lot more in depth on where the pipes go and that sort of thing. That gets reviewed typically by the engineer, and then as part of that process, would want to create a development agreement that says, hey, we're looking to put in this development. Here's an agreement we're going to make with Dover that says we're going to make these following improvements, and then that typically gets tied into a bond or line of credit. And so those two work together, so it's outlined, here's what the developer is going to do, and here's the bonding for the work they're going to do. So here's just some example language on development agreements, and I can also provide some examples of development agreements too. So. Lot escrows. So the previous example, we're talking about a bond for the whole site for like streets and landscaping and a whole bunch of other things, but there's a lot of stuff that happens on site. And so sometimes what will happen is the developer will come in and say, hey, we need to, we haven't put the landscaping in on this site just yet, but we want to try and get our certificate of occupancy. So once they get a certificate of occupancy, what's the incentive for them to come back and do those things they promised? So one mechanism that's been created, and again, these are all optional things to think about, so it is a lot escrow agreement. So it's the developer says, hey, we need to put in about $3,000 worth of, maybe it is, I don't know, we need to put in $3,000 worth of landscaping on the site, but we want to get the certificate of occupancy so someone can move in. So then it'd be an agreement where they would provide Dover then, like a lot of times a cash escrow check for like $3,000 to cover those things. They get their certificate of occupancy, and let's say this is happening in December, we're going to put all the landscaping in March. Then Dover has a $3,000 check that they hold, and then when they come back in March, put in all the plants and that sort of thing, then that $3,000 gets released back.
And if they don't come in March and do it, you got $3,000 to use to do it yourself.
Is that a deposited fund, or is it just a hold the check?
Typically it's a deposited fund.
They'd have to, so because the checks are usually only good for 90 days, it'll say.
And it's held in escrow essentially, so. Sometimes there's language on the final building permits. And let's say with our 35 lot I'm just pulling a number out of my head here. We get down to those last, they've told certificates of occupancy for, let's say, 31 to 32 of those homes, just 3 left to go. Then what some places include is a clause that allows Jeff to hold on to the certificates of occupancy for those last couple homes until, let me see here what this example is. To the bond release, and that just gives a little bit of extra leverage then too on the whole bond release process. Oh, here we go, this is the trigger. No building permit shall be issued for the final 10% of lots in a subdivision if 10%, or if 10% be less than 2 lots for the final 2 lot subdivision, so all public improvements required by the planning commission's resolution of final plat approval have been fully completed. So, one of the challenges that comes in, developer will come in, let's say it's our 35 lot example, they've sold out, but they have these last couple things to do, like they need to top the streets, which can become a little bit of a headache. They need to go through the punch list on bond release and everything like that. And that becomes a very low priority because their higher priority is moving on to the next subdivision and cranking those out. So that would give Jeff then the chance to say, hey, last 3 certificates of occupancy, you cannot get those, so they can't transfer over those final 3 homes. They can't close on them until all the rest of the improvements are done. So not every place has it, but it's just one thing to think about. It gives a little bit extra leverage to help push to get these things done. Another possible thing to think about is creating language for critical lots. Probably not so much the steep slopes, but karst features here. So it just provides a little greater clarity and visibility around critical lots. So creates the criteria on, so let's say looking at those 35 lots, they found karst features close to 4 of them, would identify those 4 as critical lots. And then it just, here it's talking a lot more about steep slopes, but on the plat would actually show an asterisk. So let's say of those 35 lots, 4 of them have a karst feature somewhere on the lot. Puts an asterisk on the lot so we know those lots need a little extra attention and
So
stuff.
what is the karst feature?
So that is a section of limestone where it's unstable and either there is a hole that creates a sinkhole or it could create a sinkhole. With the depth ratio, a lot of places will have one where the depth of the lot can't be more than 4 times its width. So it keeps the really long, skinny lots from coming into place. And because this would be a change in the subdivision regulations, any existing lots that don't meet this, they're a lot of records, so they're fine, but any new lots created would not be able to have these long, skinny lots. And that can help preserve road frontage and some other things too. And this is probably something to talk with you a lot about, but erosion and sediment control standards, driveway requirements, sometimes spacing and site distance, and I can provide some examples on these. What standards you'd like for private streets and drives, stormwater requirements, riparian buffer, so anytime there's a stream, blue line stream, what the requirements are on that. And obviously the state has regulations in there too, but it just helps provide clarity on it.
Is this also a document here that we can include language that during construction, no debris comes out on the roadway?
Mm-hmm.
I want that added.
And does this say, is there any distinction between blacktop roads or concrete roads? What the drives are?
I don't know there is, but if that's something that planning commission would like to have, then we can certainly add that in here too.
Because there needs to be curbs. If you get a subdivision, it'll have curbs on it. There actually used to be in town, because there are some on Cedar Street. When I walk, I see them.
And then for new subdivisions, anywhere there's a public or private road, or new subdivisions of more than 4 lots, do y'all want to have a sort of a threshold language on that, or? What, and I guess maybe the easiest thing would be any future public or private roads too, because then that would,
And are we gonna require sidewalks?
No. I mean, we're getting out of hand now.
Subdivisions normally have sidewalks in them.
We're not gonna run people away.
one that may not be as important, but, you know, just wanted to include it in there, non-residential subdivisions. So some places have that in case you have a subdivision for commercial or industrial, but that's, I don't know how likely that is, but just having that in there. Clarifying the enforcing officer, so just clarifying, you know, building inspector or such person designated is responsible for enforcing provisions, so clarifies if you get a note from, you know, if you get a note from Jeff, then hey, he's the person who can do that. Construction plan requirements. So again, so you have the preliminary plat that the planning commission review, but then after that, the developer then is going to create a set of construction drawings that's going to deal with things like stormwater, finalized road design, a lot of the utility design. So what this would be, and I believe I've, a couple examples in here on some of the requirements for those construction plans. So including things like, you know, ties in with the development agreement, there's a stormwater report, stormwater pollution prevention plan and permits, clarifies the vesting is for 3 years, again lining up with Tennessee law. And then just saying, hey, before you do a final plat, you have to have the construction drawing has to be done.
Now, on the drawings, will each one be a minimum of so many square feet, or how, or is that something that we need to look at as far as, because you wouldn't want a little small house and then, you know, something, if it's going to be a subdivision, is there going to be some kind of?
Minimum square footage of a house.
Yes, because I'm thinking, you know, you don't want, let's just say you've got a 1,200 square foot, and then right beside of it, you're
Right.
gonna have a 2,300 square, or 2,500 square feet, or 3,000. Will it all be based, basically, the lot acreage will be the same as the square footage? Is that something that,
Something you could think about. So right now, I think the zoning ordinance just has a minimum square footage on a house.
that's what, you know, I was thinking that, you know, with all of them, because most time they're pretty much all built alike,
Right.
you know, on the most part. But then the sizes could make a difference in how the subdivision flows too. you
Would
know.
that be something that we could address on each subdivision? Meaning if someone comes in and wanted to propose building 10 acres of 1,600 square foot houses, or someone wants to come in and put 2,400 square foot houses, I mean, your point is very valid. I don't want a 2,400 square foot house beside a 1,600 square foot house.
And be on the same side lot, you know, be on the same
You know,
size
be
lot
the
as a
same-
subdivision.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
know,
if you're gonna do a
You're saying do
subdivision,
it different subdivisions that come in.
yeah,
Yeah, if you had different subdivisions, have all the square footage houses very similar. So you get where.
and maybe that contractor make the proposal of how big they're gonna make them.
Well, could you put it like,
I don't know.
so square footage has to be within
Yeah, within our,
300 square foot
Yeah.
of each house or something like that?
Well, how would you determine that?
Well, that way, if
For
we're doing a
different
2,000 square foot house, then the one beside you, the biggest it can be is 2,300.
Well, I understand that part, but how would you do the language to differentiate from different types of subdivisions? See what I'm saying?
Well, if you
would that
just-
be on a case by case? Would that be something that you would do? If you have more acreage, normally you're gonna have more houses.
You know, if you're
On most
planning on building $700,000 homes, you don't want a 1,600 square foot home beside this. Where if you wanted a contractor to come in and wanted to really just focus on 1,600 square foot houses,
Right, but that's what I'm saying, but if you put in, if you could write the language up where it could say, square footage can't be no different than 300 square foot between houses.
Per subdivision.
Per
For
subdivision. So
Per
if you got, this
subdivision.
subdivision's doing 1,200 foot
Mhm.
square, but this one's doing 23. They can only vary by 300 square foot.
All right, so then let's think about this. You come in as a developer, you got 30 acres. And you start off with the front 10 acres of 2,000 square foot homes. And then your next development in the same area, you might want to do 2,500 square foot homes.
Created as two subdivisions.
Would that be two different
It'd be two
subdivisions?
different subdivisions, because if you do it as one, you would have to go by the rules, right? As far as,
Well, and
No.
the other
I
thing
mean,
you have to
you see,
consider a little bit on.
you've seen that, haven't you?
uh-huh,
The other thing you have to consider a little bit is, so if it's okay, why don't I pull up, just about any big developer like, let's say Lennar, Ryan Homes, or Beazer, what you'll see is that they'll have different floor plans, and there's a pretty significant difference in the floor plan size that's already coming, and a lot of it is they're trying to fit to certain lots and everything like that, so,
Are they staying within the same square footage?
no, you'll see variability, so,
they're not staying within the same size lots then.
They usually take about
They're-
four
they're-
different
they're
styles.
different-
and they
they're
put
using
in
different
in
size
the-
lots,
It's
I
like
would
Cherry
think.
Fields in there
Yeah.
on the way, on Dover Road, Cherry Fields and that Leesley Fields. There's two new ones that they're building on Dover Road. And they're putting in all different sizes. But Ryan Homes is doing one of them. And Ryan Homes is building the houses. But are we talking about an agent, somebody coming in wanting to do that? Or are we talking about a person starting a subdivision and wants to sell off lots and anybody can build?
For the best of my knowledge right now, one person's doing it all.
So he's gonna build the houses, all of them.
Selling the lots.
But I don't want to trust that.
Right, yeah, I mean, that's just what I know right now.
Well,
You know,
just
like
by
Ryan
word of
Homes,
mouth, there's
Ryan Homes
nothing
will put
written,
out four
there's
different
nothing-
styles and they'll spread them out.
and there's a conversation that goes on because they'll look at the, I used to do a little bit of this, but they'll look at the margin on each home, and then it's this whole conversation that goes on between like the sales manager, the land acquisition person on what lots they can have, and then division president, there'll be a whole discussion on, hey, what's the product mix that we're looking for, and then what'll happen is they go and sell the lots a little bit, sometimes that mix will be selling because it'll be like, hey, our Renolda house is selling like crazy, but the Wilsonian house is not, so
And we'll
then
say,
they'll
so if
change.
you want to build in here, here's the styles you can pick. You can pick either, any of these floor plans and we'll build that house for you.
And then they'll customize a little bit with bump outs and other
Right.
things like that too. So I understand the concern about not wanting to have, 3,200 square foot homes next to 1,500 square foot homes. I think, and I'll do a little
Overbuilding.
research on some possibilities on it, but I just want to put a little bit of caution in too, because you can also handcuff, I think, a lot of developers where maybe they want to have a range of homes, some of which are a little more starter variety, some of which are more move up, and have a mix.
Well, that would be that was like my point, a different part of that 30 acres.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to put them all close, right next to each other.
Right, right.
And, like the 30 acres, maybe they would be multi-phase, but a lot of times they're looking to do the preliminary plat. Maybe it would be in two segments like that too, but, it's just something to think about. What I could do is do a little more research and pull some examples too.
That'd be good. That would be really nice. Thank you.
And I can also pull some home lineups too, so you'll get a sense maybe too, if that's helpful. Everyone on time, sorry. I can finish this up real quick if that's okay.
Go.
Sure, sure.
A couple of things to think about for preliminary plats. Show adjoining property owners on the plat. If a condominium, show the location of buildings, line data, measurements to 1/100 of a foot. A lot of these are pretty standard, but I can put this together here too. Showing that parcel numbers on a tax map, that is really nice. Level of survey, so level category 3 surveys, the least accurate. Category 2 is a little more accurate. Category 1 is more accurate. A lot of times for plat requirements, they require a category 1 and category 2. And then place a note regarding drainage and erosion. So an example is developer solely responsible for any excess water, drainage, and erosion for property, so it goes right on the plat note every time. And then some possible final plat, things to think about, again, adjoining property owners shown on the plat, if condo, the as-built of the building, line data, measurement, zoning classification of lots, map parcel numbers, category 2 survey, I'll double check on that. And then a couple things too, so one thing I want to talk with you a little bit about is, there's existing standards on street design, curb design, pavement.
And that's
Are
something we're already in process of.
Oh, okay.
So,
So once those updates are in, then we can include that in with the, okay. So that was round 1.
Okay.
So I have some
Okay.
homework here too, and any other things y'all think of, y'all can run through Jeff or so, and then what I'll do is I'll start working on the, updating this, putting these things, putting together, maybe fleshing out some of these things too into amendment form.
We good? All right.
Yeah.
I have a motion to table this until next time, so we can make comments on it.
I'll make motions.
Second.
Lisa first it, Archie seconded it, all in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. And do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Lisa has a motion,
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
All right.
One,
Get it?
all right.